The following session is a psychic reading conducted by Mrs. Irva Peterson with the sensitive Ross Peterson at Laughing Gull Point, Garden, Michigan. Please clear the mind and inform us when the mind is clear.
The mind is clear.
Dear Lord, please protect this entity from all negative influences, regardless of source, and give us the answers we seek of this inquiring mind through the manifestation of truth, intelligence, and love. Amen. Would you please allow your mind to go to whom, to where, to what, and to when it is directed? The questions we have all basically pertain to death and life after death, and are designed to be available to the general public in aiding the greatest number of people toward the furthering of their soul development. Please adapt your answers to the fulfillment of this objective and phrase your answers to the comprehension level of the layman rather than to only the specialist.
What is death as we know it?
Death is birth, as ye know it. However, there are aspects here that should be touched upon that would be helpful to all. For death in one dimension is birth in another, and the process is usually endless unless the entity elects to attain the aspect of the Christ love and breaks the chain. For you see, the soul that would hover over that of the female form, waiting the emerging of that of the infant in order for it to inhabit it, does lose awareness of that it has been in the dimension that it has left. In this aspect, the soul temporarily losing consciousness could be decreed death. And yet it is actually a birth, is it not? Now, that entity and that soul inhabits that vehicle, that temple, that body, for those span of years that it is entitled to. Then death occurs. Death of what? The physical body? Yea, easily. And must be experienced by all in one fashion or another. But of course, consciousness does continue to live and enter other dimensions. For the soul can easily shed this house of clay as it has shed for most countless other houses of clay in that of the physical, you see. Now, most fear death. And this is foolish and witless indeed. For most would regard death as a gray, skeletal-like figure, draped in a hood, surrounded by the dankness and the mold and the fog and the mist and those things that are of decaying. In actuality, this is far from the truth, for death should be regarded more as the rosy-cheeked cherub. And this, of course, is depending upon how death is experienced. For death of the physical body is an individual thing. It is a very personal thing. It is different for every entity. There are some universal aspects that we can touch upon. But again, death is experienced as an end result of thousands of experiences leading up to the point of physical death, you see. Now, it would be best to understand some functions of consciousness or the mind in relation to the soul and the harmony or disharmony that can be created between that of soul mind and of physical body. Now, if that entity in the physical is that one who would seek all aspects of expression of love, if that entity is one who would diligently practice entering the Holy of Holies as of meditation, if that entity is one who has made a serious study of the language of the soul, of that of the dream, then the entity will be aware that in certain aspects of the dream, in certain aspects of meditation, and in certain aspects of natural sleep, this is what is termed the shadow of death. For you see, the consciousness is laid aside, the physical body is operating almost automatically, and yet these consciousness go to other dimension in the state of natural sleep, or in that is induced as a form of increasing thy God awareness. For those who have prepared their own path, then the transition of shedding this physical body is not one that is too disruptive, for the entity is fully aware of the continuation of consciousness. And for this one there is a very short interim of time as far as awareness or awakening is concerned. Usually, if there are those who would help these souls to cross over, so to speak, would pray for their further learning, their further involvement, rather than weep tears of self-pity and grief, then that soul could usually pass over within that of the 8th day. There are some that are enlightened to the extent that the soul could traverse from one dimension to another with little difficulty, and the transition is almost instantaneous. Look to that who are known as the masters, but most especially that one ye know best as of Jesus. For this was an entity that understood all dimensions of God, and the transition was so complete that the entity took the physical body with him, leaving no record on that of the earth to be besmirched by those in that of the form of thought. This is that is shown in the resurrection, see. Now all can learn to do this if they would emulate that has been done by he who was the master of masters. However, most do not. There are many who doubt in their mind the continuation of consciousness. And as such, they would spend what man might call a great deal of time in what would call the gray night of the soul. Others would call it the lost soul. Others would say that they are in limbo. Those who are of the Catholic faith would speak of it as purgatory. For these are not places, but states of mind. And what it is simply saying is that the entity has shed the physical body and there is confusion. There is a loss of awareness. And the entity finds itself enveloped in the mists and knows not where it is and seeks here and there and goes hither and yon, but most of all continues to want to return to the dimension that it left, the physical life. For many a soul hovers around the geographical and physical area where the demise did occur. This is what some might call the ghost, you see.